Hey guys, it's Arena. Welcome back to Fantastic Korean Dishes, where we cook up simple but delicious Korean meals. Today we're going to be cooking up a household staple. Now, what about you guys? What is like your go-to meal that you make almost on a weekly basis? Maybe it's pasta, maybe it's a salad, or maybe it's a soup. Well, for most Koreans, it's doenjang jjiggae. Personally, in my own home, when I have no idea what to make or I've just run out of ideas, I always make doenjang jjiggae. If people can't decide what to eat, I just make doenjang jjiggae. And when you go to a typical Korean restaurant, doenjang jjiggae is almost always on the menu. So today, let's cook up a nice hot pot of doenjang jjiggae. Let's get cooking. So one of the star ingredients for doenjang jjiggae is mu, or white radish. And I'm going to slice them into just small squares with a width of about 0.5 centimeters. It just makes it a lot cleaner and refreshing. So this is why it's such an essential ingredient in this stew. Okay, next we're going to chop up some onions. And again, we're just going to slice them up. Okay, so this again is about 100 grams of onions. Next, you're going to need 100 grams of young squash. This is called aehobak. If it's hard to find for you, although I do think you can find it in your local Korean supermarket, you can just replace it with something like zucchini. So again, I'm going to be cutting it in similar sizes as the rest of the vegetables. So I'm going to cut it in half like this. And once it's like a moon shape, I'm going to cut it in half again and then slice it. But for this one, I'm going to cut it at about 0.6 to 0.7 centimeters in thickness. I know that kind of sounds silly, but basically you should make it slightly thicker than the radish because it does soften easily. Next, you're going to need 1 shiitake mushroom. This is about, you can use between 10 to 20 grams of mushrooms. If you don't have shiitake at home, you can use a different type of mushroom. That's completely fine. But typically for doenjang jjiggae, Koreans love to use shiitake. Now, when you take a look at the mushroom, oftentimes people break off the stem and throw this away. But don't throw it away because this whole part is very, very useful. You can use it, and mushrooms are a great way to really like enhance any sort of soup. It's great to make stock or vegetable broth. So all you have to do is cut off the tip, which is really hard. So that's maybe about 1 centimeter to 1.5 centimeters. So you can throw this part out. Instead of cutting it, what I like to do is I just like to split it with my fingers like this. So with the mushrooms, we're going to cut them into small cube-like shapes. So I'm going to cut the shiitake mushroom 3 times in the middle, and then perpendicular. I'm going to make a grid and then make these small cubes. One other thing I want to tell you guys, with mushrooms, I mean, it's nice to clean your vegetables, you know, nice and clean, and it's good to be thorough with your cleaning, but with mushrooms, they're kind of an exception. If you add too much water, you soak them in water, it won't taste very good. So some people even just brush off some of the debris and dirt using a brush or a nice cloth. I personally like to wash them, but I rinse them really quickly, just a few seconds, just to take off the excess dirt. But yeah, that's a really good tip to know, especially if you love mushrooms. Okay, you're going to need about 80 grams of potato. We're going to cut it into cube-like shapes. And if you don't have potatoes at home, you You can use sweet potato, why not? Although it is going to be a little bit sweeter. Okay, next we're going to need some tofu. This is about 100 grams more or less of tofu. Again, I'm going to cut it into cubes. Sometimes you're going to come across two different types of tofu. Sometimes some are firmer than others, but really it doesn't matter. It's pretty much personal preference. You can use the softer one or you can use the firmer one. So we're going to put in half of a green pepper, half of a red pepper. Now this amount is not going to make the stew spicy at all. It's just going to add a tiny bit of a kick and just add a little bit more of a cleaner taste to the stew, if that makes any sense. Okay, so we're going to slice these peppers up. Okay, keeping to about 0.5 centimeters in thickness again. Now I want to ask you guys, do you know which part of the pepper is the spiciest? Well, let me show you. And when you take a look at a pepper, this is sliced in half, people often think it's the seeds, and yes, the seeds are quite spicy, but it's this white part inside. This part is the spiciest. So if you don't like a lot of spice, you can just take that out, okay? So that's a tip for you. Next, you're going to put in about 20 grams of, I'm using an Asian leek here, but you can use green onions or scallions. And I'm just going to slice them to about, again, 0.5 centimeters in thickness. And last but not least, we're going to need 100 grams of beef. Today I'm using beef brisket, but the part, it's called Tbsp in Korean, and it's basically, they call it the brisket point or deckle. It has a lot more fat than your typical brisket. So we're going to layer them on top of each other, and we're going to cut them maybe about 3 to 5 centimeters in thickness. Just remember with beef brisket or any meat, when you put it in stew, it is going to shrink. So just keep that in mind. All right, all our ingredients are ready to go. Let's go to the stovetop. When you're making doenjang jjigae, the order of ingredients really matter. And not just that, instead of just cooking everything in the water or in the broth, it's nice to fry up the meat before you do that. So I'm going to put in our brisket on just a regular pot. It's a cast iron pot. We're going to just fry it without any oil because the beef itself has quite a lot of oil in it. And because this beef is sliced thinly, you do want to keep on stirring it, making sure that it doesn't stick or burn to the pot. Okay, once it's fully cooked, we're going to add in the radish. And now we're going to add in our superstar ingredient, and that is, yes, you guessed it, doenjang, also known as fermented soybean paste. So you can pick this up at your local Korean supermarket. And there's different types of doenjang. Some are darker than others, but they all taste a little bit different. You're going to have to try it out. We're going to put in 4 tablespoons of this. And doenjang itself has salty flavor in it, so you don't need to add any other seasoning to this. And we're going to cook it until the radish starts to turn a little bit translucent. So the doenjang right now is acting like a marinade for the meat and the radish. So the radish is a little bit translucent. I'm going to turn up the heat and add in about 500 milliliters of water. And then we're going to let that come to a boil, and then we're going to add in all of our other ingredients. Now, for those of you who have never tried doenjang or fermented soybean paste, I know just like the color of it and the smell of it might turn you away, but you definitely need to give it a try. It is so good, and when you add it to different foods, it just makes it so much heartier and so savory and delicious, and it's also so good for you. Okay, so now it's coming to a boil, and what I'm doing is just taking off the foam that comes up at the top, and this is actually just coming from the meat. We want to take this out. So keep it open the whole time. The only time you should be closing it is after you've done, you know, eating it a little bit and you want to put it away, then put the lid on. But when you're cooking it for the first time, it's good to keep it open. Okay, we're going to put in the other ingredients. We're going to start with the hardest ingredient here, which is the potatoes. Next, we're going to put in the shiitake mushrooms. Because mushrooms are so soft, people tend to think that it should be one of the last ingredients, but actually mushrooms are really good at retaining their shape during cooking, so it's fine to put them in early. And again, like I mentioned before, they give out really great flavor for any type of broth or stock. So we're going to let that boil again. We're going to put in the young squash along with the onions. And we're going to also put in the tofu. Okay, we're almost done. I'm just going to garnish it. And we're done. Okay? I think it's ready to go. Oh, I'm so excited to try this. It smells so good. Doesn't that look so good? That is so good. It's so flavorful, very hearty. You've got so many vegetables in here, the tofu and the meat. Oh, it's perfect. It's so warming, and it's such a healthy meal to serve to your family. Definitely give it a try at home. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I'll be back with more fantastic Korean dishes very soon. Stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you soon. Bye!